How is everyone? My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm happy to be a member of the New Frontiers Committee, and I'm also happy to speak to you today as a voter. I'm an advocate for civic reimagination, and I seek to empower voices of marginalized and traditionally disconnected voters through research and technology. In 2016, I co-founded Politicking. It's a political information platform that engages traditionally marginalized voters with mainstream, nonpartisan information. While I was raised in politics and public service, I worked at the Harvard Institute of Politics and also have much experience in civic research. After seeing so many people unsatisfied with the product of the 2016 election, I wondered, had they realized how disengaged they were? So I started Politicking. We'd integrate information, technology, and make it easily accessible. On to moving and joining the New Frontiers Network. This network has enhanced my perspective about the need for change within our civic systems. Imagine if we understood who and what issues were really at stake when we participated in elections. This means understanding that much more that what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania is at stake. You know, what happens at City Hall or at the county building actually impacts our day-to-day lives. The network has really introduced me to opportunities for innovation. I've had a chance to speak with people in finance. I've had a chance to speak with public officials or folks who love data like me. We all get together and collaborate to ensure that there are innovative ideas that promote equity for all through civic engagement. The New Frontiers Network has also introduced me to a wealth of knowledge about the legacy of civic engagement from the dynamic breakthroughs of JFK. Innovations in civic engagement do not start, of course, with what happened with the civil rights and voting rights movements of the 1960s. We should all think more about how we can embrace innovation in civic engagement. And I think we can do this first by reimagining our civic systems. Let's utilize technology and modern resources to pursue accountability from our leaders. I encourage you all to listen today, as I'm sure you already have, and really think about what you can do. You know, it's always interesting to think about what we can invent or what we can come up with, but let's be resourceful and continue to embrace each other and ideas, again, that will work for all.
Hello, I'm Matthew Cornelius, the Executive Director of the Alliance for Digital Innovation. We are a group of committed technology and cybersecurity companies who believe it's in the best interest of the American government to have access to the greatest and most innovative capabilities to solve mission outcomes and deliver better services to citizens. I'm very proud to be a part of the New Frontier Forum and to share all of these wonderful experiences, including those we are hearing about today, with so many like-minded, terrific individuals. One definition of frontier is the limit of knowledge of the most advanced achievement in a field. America is its own frontier, and we are constantly imagining what it can and should be. This experience made possible by the JFK Library, enables us all to use lessons of the past and perspectives of the present to think about the future that can be achieved through greater sharing, listening, collaboration, innovation, and most importantly, patriotism. We are all here because of our love for this country and our reverence for one of its greatest leaders, President Kennedy, and our zeal over a half century after his passing to continue this American experiment, dream of futures that might seem unimaginable today, and to build the communities, relationships, and opportunities for us all to achieve a brighter future together. And with that, now we will have our summit keynotes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mick Ebeling from Not Impossible Labs. Thank you so much for inviting me to address you today at the summit. I'm incredibly honored, so thank you. Not Impossible and the work that I do is really this extension of this infatuation, this obsession that I have at looking at things that are impossible and trying to make them not impossible. And this is a result of now 10 years plus of different explorations, different kind of deep dives into tackling things that we call absurdities. Things that we see and we say, that's absurd, that's not right, that shouldn't be that way. And then we dogpile on it with brilliant people. We convene brilliant hackers and makers and programmers and engineers from all over the world to tackle these absurdities and try and create solutions, accessible solutions for people, things that are low cost, things that are easy to make, either DIY themselves or easy to find someplace. And it started, our first foray into this happened, like most great things in the world, on accident, when my wife and I discovered a paralyzed graffiti artist in Los Angeles who had ALS and was unable to talk, unable to communicate, and even more importantly, was unable to express himself in the passion, his art, his what he was so committed to. He was unable to do his art. And so a team of programmers and engineers and what we call misfit geniuses and mad scientists descended upon our house. My wife and kids and I moved out, tables and chairs pushed against the wall, people sleeping on floors, people sleeping on couches. And in the end, we ended up creating, at the time, what was the world's most low-cost DIY ocular recognition device that allowed him, this artist, to draw again using only his eyes. And that was this kind of aha moment of like, wait a second, how did we do that? What just happened? And that intensified this study, this passion around this concept of impossible. And years after that, our next foray into that space was around trying to create a low-cost, accessible prosthetic for a young boy who had both of his arms blown off in the war. And we said, how can we make it so this 12-year-old boy who's unable to take care of himself, unable to feed himself, how can we make it so he could have some form of independence again? So rinse and repeat, brilliant scientists and mad scientists and geniuses and hackers and makers and programmers descend upon the house. Wife and kids and I move out. Tables and chairs, sleeping on floors, the same thing. And in the end, we created the world's first 3D printing prosthetic lab. A way for the refugee camp where we deployed this in, a way for them to continue to deploy these solutions long after we left. We have a myriad of other things that we're tackling right now. Everything from solutions to abate and address symptoms of Parkinson's, to create tools for people who are deaf or hard of hearing to be able to experience music through their skin as the eardrum as opposed to through their eardrum. We're addressing things in Alzheimer's and dementia, hunger, a whole wide swath of different things. But the one commonality that I would say in all the things that we're tackling is that we have no idea how we're supposed to pull these off when we start. We are almost overwhelmed with this fear of the fact that we're not the ones to be able to pull this off. This self-consciousness of wait a second, we don't have the degrees or the diplomas or the credentials to be able to do this. But what moves us past that insecurity, moves us past that feeling of self-doubt, is the fact that this is an absurdity that must be solved. This is something that is a hard thing to do. And so we commit to things that are hard, because all great
and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties, and both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage.
The way we have translated that brilliant JFK quote is in a mantra that literally is emblazoned on our walls. It's in our signatures, and that is commit and then figure it out. Because we feel that when we're staring at these impossibilities, somebody has to try. Somebody has to do something to try to move the dial, to try to advance the ball in some capacity so that that absurdity can be addressed. One of our calls to action is, if not now, when? And if not me, who? And we live in a world now that is almost overwhelmed with challenges. These are unheralded times that we're living in right now. But one of the things that I have learned in the studying of impossible is the fact that we all need to just take a step back, because what is difficult for us now, what is the most difficult thing, the most greatest challenge, the biggest obstacle, the most daunting task for us right now is just that. It's for us. It's the most daunting thing for us. Think about past generations. Think about what our ancestors have gone through. Plagues, famine, genocide. Think of the things that they have encountered and been able to push through. Do we dare say that what we're experiencing right now is greater than what they've experienced? The answer is no. The answer is no, we shouldn't compare, because it is completely relevant to our experience, not to their experience. But if we learn anything from history, what we should learn is that in the studying of all things that are possible today, the main thing to pull out of that is that anything that's possible today, anything that you can touch or taste or smell or feel, anything that is possible today was impossible at one point. So the inverse of that is a prediction of our future. Anything that is impossible today, if we base it on stats, if we base it on history, if we base it on data, anything that is impossible today is on the trajectory of moving and transitioning from impossible to possible. So who are we to be so narcissistic to think that our challenges will be that one thing that in the history of our species, in the history of mankind, shall always and forever remain impossible? It won't. Part of how we tackle the things that we tackle is through a mantra: commit and then figure out how you're going to do it. Commit and then figure it out. The brilliant quote by President Kennedy: "We commit publicly and in full view of the world, and without any understanding of how we might accomplish what we have set out to do." Because once you have jumped, you can't scramble back up on the cliff. And so the challenges that we are facing right now, the things that we encounter in our lives, the things that we are presented every single day, it requires courage. It requires people to grasp the idea that fear and failure can only be surmounted, can only be dealt with by having tenacity and courage. And that courage is something that can't be taught. It must be exemplified. People like yourself can stare and look at the problems of the world and say, that's not right. Something needs to be done about that. We cannot sit back and just wait for systems and bureaucracies and governments and institutions to deal with the problems that are presented to us and before us. We as a species, we as a people must say, we have to do something about that. We have to start on that journey of transitioning things from impossible to possible. And maybe it doesn't happen in our lifetime. Maybe we begin the journey, but our path on that journey is cut short. But to show our children and future generations that the effort towards the accomplishment and the solving of things that are critical on this planet, that those are the worthwhile efforts. Those are the things that we must tackle. That is how we guarantee the progress and the success of future generations. So, as you go forth, as you move on into the rest of this year, the rest of the decade, the rest of your life, the thing that I would ask you is to believe that you are the ones who can solve these problems. Believe that there is not someone special out there that you're waiting for, that you are the ones to do this. Because as JFK said, these times demand
imagination and courage and perseverance.
And the journey that you've all embarked upon, continue to be pioneers of that new frontier. Continue on that pursuit of progress. Continue on that pursuit of advancement of our species for the sake of this planet. Thank you again for inviting me. It is truly, truly an honor to be able to address you at the summit. Go forth and live a not impossible life and do everything you can to transition things from impossible to not impossible.
Hello, my name is Jordan Richardson, and I'm the Talent and Business Development Director at Not Impossible Labs and member of the JFK Library New Frontier Forum. As Mick just reminded us, we are all charged with committing to solve absurdities on this planet, assembling the necessary members of a superhero Avengers team, and leveraging technology for the sake of humanity to better the world at the risk of failure. Every one of us has individual chronicles filled with superpowers, trials, tribulations. So we must use our learnings from the past, as well as our current privilege and resources, to create more inclusive opportunities for others and tackle new frontiers. Crises creates an opportunity for people to come together in groups and for individuals and institutions to create change. Over the last several months, our forum group was not only focused on the why of our individual and collective goals or our next moonshot, but also on the how. How, as a country, will we put aside our tribalistic tendencies, which are so ingrained on a humanistic level, but exacerbated today, especially on a political and societal level? One prominent and alienating source that we are surrounded by daily is the global media, where we consume a biased narrative without proper historical context or encouragement that change is possible. The world is much more complex and with so much more creative potential than the nightly news suggests. If we can entrust ourselves to and have faith in each other, instead of selfish and divisive entities, we will create a narrative for enduring transformation. Being in the New Frontier Forum has given me a broader perspective, better understanding, and impactful context of some of the most important and pressing whys and hows in our country and world today. There is no question that we're living in tumultuous times, and possibly from the viewpoint of younger generations, these times are unparalleled. But we must remember that we have in fact witnessed seemingly unimaginable and preposterously impossible things in the past, yet found a way to overcome them. A key lesson from our forum experience is knowing that our history gives us the perspective that people have and will continue a legacy of service and sacrifice to achieve success for the greater good. One of the specific hows that our forum discusses is, how do we want to arrive at this new frontier? Will we be divided by trivial prejudices like one's political preference, the inhumane biases towards race and gender? Or will we be united in unrivaled will and determination focused on humankind? We unanimously chose the latter. We recognize that giving spirit, the ask not spirit of President Kennedy, can lead to monumental breakthroughs from our fears and scarcity defaults. We are the sum of generations and generations past. Our experiences that have shaped who we are as individuals, a country, a planet, connect more directly with some of our fellow humans than others, which may only intersect tangentially. I myself am only a few generations removed from West Indian slave immigrants on my father's side and mud hut digging pioneers settling the West on my mother's side. As highlighted by the compelling stories and experiences shared by all of my forum group mates, we must remember that each and every one of us on this planet has a unique and valuable story that is worthy of attention and understanding. It is our job to recognize and reject the social, political, gender, racial, and economic differences that separate us and evangelize the humanity that unites us. Another one of my personal heroes and great American freedom fighters, Frederick Douglass, said it best: "I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong." We must relight the torch of American ingenuity and bravery and address possibilities, once again, utilizing radical collaborations. One of Mick's favorite quotes that he lives by is from Horace Mann: "Be ashamed to die until you've won some victory for humanity." This exact sentiment is shared by our next speaker, Henk Rogers. To them, the members of our forum, and those of you listening right now, believing the impossible risks coming across as delusional thinking. Our fear of failure and false senses of security should never be the excuse to let our biggest problems and challenges remain unaddressed, regardless of how uncomfortable the issues may be. As President Kennedy said, "For courage, not complacency, is needed today." The similar lesson that we can learn from both Mick and Henk is refreshingly simple: solve for one person, one mission, in order to create the catalyst towards scaling that solution and impact exponentially. This is something we are all capable of, regardless of who employs us or who our elected officials are. The new frontier is here, and it is time we once again re-examine President Kennedy's inspiration, pivoting away from costly and inconsequential divisiveness and repositioning our human potential towards the service of others and our planet. We can look at President Kennedy's construction of the Peace Corps as a literal and symbolic call to action for generations to come. Moving away from battle cries of military service, the Peace Corps focuses on inclusive human potential through agriculture, the environment, community economic development, health, education, and youth and development project sectors. Today, we must embody President Kennedy's urgency of confronting a new set of monumental challenges, sprinting towards unification with the spirit of adventure, and turning away from idle promises and public addresses, begetting only more discord and consumption. Whether we strive to effect change on a personal, smaller familial level, or on an interplanetary scale, it is imperative that we dedicate ourselves to the mission and lead vigorously towards accessible solutions. As Henk will show and tell you next, some moonshots are much more literal than others, and creating cultures and networks that embolden creativity, courage, vision, dedication, and an entrepreneurial spirit will be the way we succeed. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce my fellow New Frontier Forum group mate, Henk Rogers.
So, John F. Kennedy, when he gave that speech, I was 7 years old. We go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Those are the words, that got us to the moon in the first place. It led to the Apollo program. And the Apollo program landed 6 times on the moon. That means 12 humans walked on the moon. What an accomplishment. And what happened since then? We haven't been back. Well, it's time. So fast forward, I'm in my early 50s, and I have a life-changing experience. It comes to me in the form of a heart attack. And the heart attack tells me, hey, you know what? You may someday go. It made me vulnerable. And when you go, what is it that's going to upset you if you haven't done anything about it? What are your actual missions in life? What's your bucket list? So I gave that some thought. And of course, climate change is the big one. We have to fix this planet, and that comes first. But the next has to be for us to go to other planets and bring life as we know it to other planets. You know, I look at Mother Nature or Gaia, if you will, and I think she is heating up. She's like having hurricanes and fires and so. I think she's pregnant, and I think we're it. So basically what we need to do is we need to get off this planet, and we need to take life as we know it to another planet. Once we do that, and we learn how to live on another planet, like Mars, then Mother Nature will have had a baby. I know that's a big story. So why Mars? Mars is obviously the closest to Earth of any planet in our solar system. There's indications that there used to be surface water, which means that there used to be an atmosphere. And theoretically, with terraforming, we could put all that back. It's a big, long journey, but it's possible. But the journey to Mars is a very long one. Using today's technology, it would take us 8 months to go, 6 months to wait while the Earth comes around, and then another 8 months to come back. That's 22 months. What happens when a small group of people are stuck together in a small space for 22 months? That was what NASA asked us to answer. So we built a 36-foot dome that sleeps 6, 1,200 square foot. And if you go outside, you have to wear a spacesuit. If you communicate with the outside world, it takes 20 minutes each way. Now we did 5 missions, 4 months, 4 months, 8 months, 12 months, and 8 months. And we found out how to do crew selection, and we found out crew psychology. So we learned a lot. But here's the problem. Because it's so far, you have to get it right the first time. So we need to practice. And where's the place that we practice? It's the moon. So we pivoted our efforts to the moon, and we started thinking about the moon. So there will be 3 phases in how to build a moon base. The phase 1 is the simple one. It's the one that we use to build the ISS, the International Space Station. We build a cylinder on Earth, put it inside of a rocket, we put it on the moon, and we have our first piece of our habitat. And we do that 4 or 5 times, and now we have a little community, if you will, with rooms. But soon we'll find out that we won't have enough space inside of those cylinders. We need bigger space because we need to do bigger things. And so phase 2 will be where we build larger structures using parts that are prefabricated, then brought to the moon, and then assembled by robots on the moon. That's phase 2. Phase 3 is once we have enough infrastructure on the moon, we can start using the material of the moon to, it's called in situ resource utilization, to actually build things using the material of the moon. I have an organization called Pisces, the Pacific International Space Center for Exploration Systems, and we again work with NASA to make lunar concrete. And the lunar concrete is made out of Hawaii volcanic dust, which is 96% the same as lunar dust or regolith. And all we did was add heat, and the heat turned it into concrete. This will enable us to build underground structures, large underground structures. Now, SpaceX, they have had their recent great successes. And I talked to the top people in SpaceX, and they told me they could land me 150 metric tons on the moon by 2024. And the question is, what are we sending to the moon? And the answer is phase 2 moon parts. We are going to build a moon base on the moon using robots, large structures, and then we're going to send people to live in them. So I'm going to leave you with a little animated video of the moon base being built. At first you'll see some cylinders being deployed, and then you'll see a dome being built. And the robots are going to be putting the triangles into place. And at first, the floor layer will be added. And next, we will have the ground floor wall. And little by little, the dome will take shape until it's complete. And once it's completed, the robots can get started and build a second dome and a third dome, because we've worked out how to build many of them by this time. I'm hoping that you will support this effort. This is the ultimate dream of John F. Kennedy, is to have a permanent human presence on the moon. And this is the future of mankind, humankind. Thank you very much.